I couldn't believe what I was watching. My chest tightened and my stomach lurched as I stared at my phone screen, where my mother sat at our family dining table, crystal wine glass in hand, completely unaware she was being broadcast to the internet. The wine glass, the Waterford crystal I'd given her for Christmas last year, bought with the commission from my biggest sale. "Oh, please," my mother scoffed, rolling her eyes dramatically, the gesture so familiar it made my throat constrict. Olivia thinks selling luxury properties makes her successful. She couldn't hack it in nursing school, and now she's just wandering through life like a desperate failure. My hands trembled as I tried to steady the phone. I was sitting in Bellini's, Chicago's most exclusive restaurant, across from clients who were about to sign papers for a $2.3 million lakefront property. I'd excused myself to check an urgent message and now stood in the elegant hallway outside the restrooms, my professional composure crumbling with each word from my mother's lips. My cousin Megan had texted me 30 minutes ago, "You need to see this now." "I'm so sorry." She'd attached a link to her TikTok Live, part of her ongoing campaign to become a social media influencer. I'd been downtown closing this important deal when the family gathered for Sunday dinner, and I'd just stepped away from the table when the message came through. "My name is Olivia Bennett. I'm 32 years old, and for the past 5 years, I've been quietly paying my mother's medical bills after her multiple sclerosis diagnosis. I've been driving her to appointments, fighting with insurance companies over claims, and covering her medication costs, all while working 70-hour weeks to build my real estate consultancy business in Chicago." No one at that dinner table knew that I'd been denied a mortgage for my own home last month because I'd maxed out my credit cards paying for her latest round of treatments. "It's such a shame," my mother continued on the video, her voice taking on that performative sympathetic tone I knew all too well. She seemed to relish the attention from my Aunt Diana and Uncle Victor. All these grand dreams about becoming a nurse, and now she just sells houses to people who actually succeeded in life. She laughed, and to my horror, I could hear my aunt and uncle chuckling along with her. Megan's camera caught everything. I could see she was filming from her lap, probably trying to be discreet while documenting authentic family moments for her followers. My mother had no idea she was being recorded, which made her words cut even deeper. "Remember when she dropped out of nursing school?" My mother turned to Diana, swirling her wine with practiced elegance. "She came home crying about how hard the exams were. Pathetic. And now she acts like selling a house every few months makes her successful. As if that's something to be proud of." The truth knifed through me. I'd put my nursing education on hold specifically to help her when she got sick. I was in my 3rd year, with excellent grades and glowing evaluations from my clinical rotations. Now I was making more than decent money in real estate, but every extra dollar went to her medical care instead of back to school. The student loans still hung over me like a dark cloud, growing larger each year with interest. "She just doesn't have what it takes," my mother sighed dramatically, reaching for the wine glass. "Some people just aren't cut out for real achievement. Not like Ryan, now he's going places." The live stream continued for another excruciating minute before Megan finally turned the camera away. I leaned against the wall of the restaurant, my breathing shallow, as the bitter reality sank in. For years, I'd told myself that my mother's cutting remarks were just her pain talking, or her misguided way of motivating me to do better. But this wasn't a momentary lapse, this was who she truly was when she thought I couldn't hear, and now there was undeniable proof. My phone buzzed again, another text from Megan. "I'm so sorry you had to see that." I didn't realize what she was saying until it was too late. "Do you want me to take the video down? I feel terrible." I stared at the message for a long moment, my thumb hovering over the keyboard. "No," I typed back, surprising myself with the decision. Leave it up. I need to show you something tomorrow. Thank you for being honest with me. Taking a deep breath, I splashed cold water on my face in the restroom, reapplied my makeup with trembling hands, and returned to my clients with a professional smile that felt like a mask. Somehow I made it through the signing, but I couldn't taste the celebratory champagne. The next morning, the drive back to my apartment that night was a blur. I barely remembered saying goodbye to my clients or navigating Chicago's busy streets. My mind kept replaying my mother's words, her laughter as she mocked the career I'd built specifically to support her. 5 years ago, my life had been on a completely different path. I was 27, excelling in my 3rd year of nursing school, and thriving. I'd wanted to be a nurse since I was a teenager, inspired by the compassionate care my father received during his brief battle with heart disease. He died when I was 16, leaving Mom and me to rely on each other. Then came the call that changed everything. Mom had collapsed while teaching her high school English class and been rushed to the hospital. The diagnosis, aggressive multiple sclerosis that would require extensive ongoing treatment and care. It's not fair, she'd cried from her hospital bed, gripping my hand. How am I supposed to afford all this? My teacher's insurance barely covers anything. Her face crumpled, reminding me painfully of how she'd looked at Dad's funeral. Despite her frequent criticisms and sometimes harsh words, I believed we had a bond that mattered. She'd sacrificed for me growing up, working extra hours grading papers, making sure I had opportunities, and now it was my turn to step up. Within months, I made the heartbreaking decision to pause my nursing education. My then fiancé, Mark, couldn't understand. This could take years, Liv. Your mother has always found ways to keep you close, he'd warned. We broke up 3 months later when I missed his family's Christmas gathering because Mom had a medical emergency that turned out to be a mild headache. Real estate had flexible hours and the potential for good money. I could drive Mom to appointments, handle her care, and still earn enough to cover our growing expenses. I discovered I had a talent for it, particularly with high-end properties and discerning clients. It was supposed to be temporary, just until she stabilized, just until I could save enough to return to school. But temporary turned into years. Mom's condition had improved with the treatments, but she still needed expensive medications, regular specialist visits, and physical therapy. I'd become the sole manager of her healthcare, spending countless hours on the phone with insurance companies and researching treatment options. My nursing education, though incomplete, proved invaluable in navigating the complex medical system. "You've become so responsible," she would occasionally say when I brought her prescriptions or paid another bill, and in those rare moments of appreciation, those words had sustained me through countless sleepless nights and 70-hour work weeks. I'd clung to those moments, treasuring them like rare gems that proved my sacrifices were worthwhile. Now those memories felt hollow, like fool's gold rather than the real thing. I pulled into my driveway and sat in silence, the engine still running as if some part of me wasn't ready to stop, to face what came next. I hadn't told Mom I was coming back today. She thought I was still in Chicago, working with potential clients, an opportunity I'd cut short after seeing the video. My migraine was starting to pulse at my temples, the familiar pain that had become my constant companion over the past few years. My phone buzzed, a text from Megan, "I'm at Percolate on Elm Street. Can meet whenever you're ready." I took a deep breath, trying to organize the tornado of thoughts in my head. Opening my messenger bag, I pulled out a thick folder labeled Mom Medical and Financial. Inside was a meticulously documented record of every payment I'd made over the last 5 years, every insurance premium, every medication cost, every specialist visit, all cataloged with receipts, bank statements, and even copies of declined credit card applications. Next to it was a folded nursing uniform I'd never had the chance to wear, still in its plastic wrapper, a painful reminder of the path not taken. I'd been keeping these records for tax purposes and to track my mother's treatment progress, never imagining they would serve as evidence of her betrayal and my own naivety. I gathered the folder and the uniform, took one more steadying breath that didn't steady me at all, and texted Megan back, "Be there in 15 minutes. Thank you for waiting." The coffee shop was bustling with afternoon customers, but I spotted Megan immediately. At 16, she stood out with her vibrant purple-tipped hair and chunky headphones around her neck. When she saw me, her face crumpled with guilt, her eyes red-rimmed from crying. "I'm so sorry, Olivia," she blurted as I sat down, nearly knocking over her iced coffee. I didn't know she would say those horrible things. I was just doing my TikTok live like I always do, trying to get more followers with real family moments, and then Aunt Eleanor started talking about you, and it got so mean and cruel, and God, it's not your fault. I feel terrible. Megan, I said, gently cutting off her rambling, my voice steadier than I expected. Actually, I need to thank you. She froze, eyebrows shooting up in confusion. Thank me? For what? For showing everyone how awful your mom was being? I placed the medical folder on the table and opened it, revealing the overwhelming evidence of 5 years of financial sacrifice. For showing me the truth I didn't want to see, I said quietly. Look at this, I've been paying for everything. Her medications, treatments, insurance premiums, specialist consultations, physical therapy, alternative treatments, adaptive equipment for her home, everything. Megan's eyes widened as she flipped through the meticulous documentation, pages and pages of financial sacrifice laid bare in black and white. Olivia, this is insane. This isn't thousands of dollars. It's over $120,000 actually, she whispered, looking at the final tally on my spreadsheet. You're right, I confirmed, the number still shocking even to me. I put my entire life on hold for her, my nursing degree that I was 3 years into, my savings, my relationship with Mark, even my dream of buying my own place. Everything went on the back burner because I thought she needed me. Because I thought that's what a good daughter does. I unfolded the nursing uniform, still crisp and white, never worn. I was supposed to graduate 2 years ago. I would have been a registered nurse by now. Megan looked up from the paperwork, her expression shifting from shock to indignation, her teenage sense of justice fully engaged. And she has the nerve to call you a failure? To make fun of your career, the career you only have because of her? That's beyond messed up, Olivia. I nodded, feeling a strange calm settling over me, like the eye of a hurricane. I always thought her criticism was her way of motivating me, that underneath it all, she appreciated what I was doing. That maybe she felt guilty about needing so much help. I laughed, a hollow sound that surprised both of us. Guess I was catastrophically wrong about that. So what are you going to do? Megan asked, leaning forward. I took the folder back, my decision crystallizing as I spoke. I'm done. I've already started the paperwork to remove myself from her accounts. I called the insurance company this morning. You're not going to confront her directly? Megan seemed surprised. I shook my head, thinking of all the past confrontations that had ended with me apologizing somehow. What would be the point? She'd just deny it, tell me I misunderstood, or say I'm being too sensitive and dramatic. I pulled out my phone and brought up my banking app. I've been putting aside a little money each month in a separate account, hoping to eventually return to nursing school. It's not much, about $8,000, but now I'm going to use every cent of it for exactly that. As I spoke, I transferred the funds I'd earmarked for my mother's next round of treatments into my personal savings account. The action took only seconds, but it felt momentous, like stepping off a cliff and discovering I could fly. Wow, Megan whispered, watching me. Are you absolutely sure about this? I've never been more sure of anything in my life, I replied, surprised by how steady my voice sounded despite the storm inside me. I've spent 5 years being her safety net while she dismisses everything I do and actively undermines my self-worth. That ends today. I showed Megan the acceptance letter I'd received 2 months ago from the nursing program, the one I'd nearly deferred yet again because of Mom's planned treatments. I start in the fall, I told her, running my finger over the embossed university logo. And I'm not deferring again. Not for anything or anyone. Megan reached across the table and squeezed my hand, her eyes fierce with loyalty. I'll send you the full video, just in case you need it. And Olivia? I'm really proud of you. This takes serious guts. As we parted ways outside the coffee shop, I felt the weight of years of obligation lifting from my shoulders. My migraine was receding for the first time in days. For the first time in so long, I was choosing myself. The guilt I'd expected to feel was nowhere to be found, replaced instead by a sense of clarity and purpose that had been missing for far too long. I stood taller as I walked to my car. 3 days later, the insurance company representative sounded confused when I called for the follow-up. You want to remove yourself as the guarantor on Eleanor Bennett's accounts? May I ask why? This is quite unusual, Ms. Bennett. Personal reasons, I replied, my voice remarkably steady as I paced my apartment. I'll no longer be responsible for any payments after this month. I need to make that absolutely clear. It was day 3 of my new resolve. I'd spent the weekend in a productive frenzy, calling insurance companies, updating payment information, canceling automatic transfers, and drafting necessary emails. My dining room table was covered with paperwork as I systematically dismantled the financial web I'd created to support my mother. Next to it sat my nursing school acceptance packet, my beacon of hope. The representative continued, her voice cautious, Ms. Bennett, I should inform you that without your support, your mother's premium will increase substantially, likely triple the current amount, and her coverage options may be severely limited. Given her condition, this could impact her access to certain specialists and treatments. I understand completely. I paused, remembering all the times I'd fought these same insurance companies on my mother's behalf. Could you please send a formal letter explaining these changes to her home address? I want to make sure she's fully informed of the implications. I knew exactly what I was doing. The letter would arrive in a week, giving me time to implement the rest of my plan before the inevitable confrontation. Part of me felt cruel, but a stronger part felt like I was finally taking a full breath after years of drowning. My phone had been buzzing with messages from my mother since yesterday. She had no idea what I was doing, but she'd expected me to drive her to a doctor's appointment this morning. I hadn't shown up. Where are you? I've been waiting for an hour. The doctor's office called. They said my insurance card was declined. Fix it immediately. Olivia, this is unacceptable. Are you ignoring me? Answer your damn phone. I need those prescriptions filled today. Each message strengthened my resolve rather than weakening it. I switched my phone to silent and continued working, a strange sense of power flowing through me with each form I completed. By evening, I had completed most of the financial separations and moved on to the next phase. I opened my laptop and began composing a single, carefully worded email to be sent to my entire extended family. Dear family, after much consideration and soul-searching, I will no longer be managing my mother's medical care or financial support. For the past 5 years, I have covered all expenses related to her condition, totaling over $120,000. This has included insurance premiums, medication costs, specialist visits, equipment, and numerous treatments. I've made this decision for personal reasons that I'm not ready to discuss in detail, but I wanted you all to be informed, as my mother may require assistance moving forward. Attached is a detailed breakdown of the support I've provided over the years, should any of you wish to help shoulder this responsibility. I hope you understand that this was not a decision I made lightly or without considerable pain. Sincerely, Olivia. Later that evening, I attached the spreadsheet I'd created, documenting every payment, every appointment, every prescription, and every hour spent managing her care over the past 5 years. The evidence was irrefutable, a meticulous record of my sacrifices laid out in cold, hard numbers. I added a brief note explaining the most critical medications and treatments, then hit send before I could second-guess myself. Megan had sent me the full TikTok live video as promised. My hands shook slightly as I downloaded it and saved multiple copies, one to my computer, one to my cloud storage, one to a password-protected folder on Google Drive, and one to a USB drive that I tucked into my desk drawer. I had no specific plans for the video yet, but something deep inside me whispered that I might need it as protection. The doorbell rang, its cheerful chime startling me so badly I nearly knocked over my coffee mug. Through the peephole, I saw my mother standing on my porch, her face contorted with a rage I recognized all too well. Her hair was perfectly styled, but she leaned heavily on her cane, the prop she only used when she wanted to emphasize her condition. I stepped back from the door, my heart hammering against my ribs like it wanted to escape. Olivia. I know you're in there. Open this door right now. Her voice was sharp enough to cut glass. I remained silent, watching her shadow move beneath the door as she shifted her weight. You've missed 3 of my calls. My medication refill was denied at the pharmacy. What exactly do you think you're doing? My throat tightened, the old instinct to apologize and fix everything bubbling up. I swallowed it down and took a deep breath, forcing myself to speak clearly through the door. I'm not doing this anymore, Mom. You'll be receiving information from the insurance company soon that explains everything. I suggest you read it carefully and contact your pension administrator. What are you talking about? What have you done? Open this door immediately. She rattled the handle violently. No. The single word felt foreign and powerful on my lips, like speaking a spell. I've heard what you really think of me. I saw Megan's video, every word you said about me at the family dinner. I think it's time we both moved on with our separate lives. There was a moment of confused silence before she exploded, her voice rising to a pitch that would have the neighbors talking for weeks. Is this about money? Some stupid things I might have said when I was frustrated? After everything I've done for you. After all my sacrifices as a single mother. I almost laughed at the cruelty of her framing, pressing my palm against the door that separated us. Goodbye, Mom. Please don't come back. I'll always care about you, but I can't be your caretaker anymore. You ungrateful little. Her words devolved into threats and accusations that grew more vicious by the second. I heard a thump, her fist against my door, and flinched. As her protests grew louder, I forced myself to walk away, each step back to my laptop feeling like an act of revolution. With each foot of distance between us, I felt lighter, as if I was finally shedding a burden I'd carried for far too long. I put on noise-canceling headphones and returned to organizing my nursing school materials, my mother's muffled shouts eventually fading as she realized I wasn't going to give in. 1 week later, the fallout came swiftly and brutally. Within hours of sending my email, my phone exploded with notifications. Aunt Diana was shocked and appalled by my heartless abandonment of my own mother. Uncle Victor thought I was being selfish and cruel beyond words. My cousin Ryan, who'd benefited from my mother's favoritism for years, suggested I grow up and sort out whatever petty disagreement I was having with Mom instead of throwing a tantrum. Only Megan and, surprisingly, my elderly Aunt Bridget, my father's sister, seemed to understand. Bridget's message was simple but powerful. It takes tremendous courage to stand up for yourself after years of sacrifice, dear. Your father would be proud. Call me if you need anything, including a place to stay. I blocked my mother's number first, my finger trembling slightly as I hit confirm. Then, one by one, I muted the relatives who couldn't bother to ask for my side of the story before condemning me. The silence that followed was strangely peaceful, like the calm after a violent storm. 3 days later, I sat in the admissions office at Chicago Central Nursing School, finalizing my re-enrollment for the fall semester. Sunlight streamed through the windows, catching dust motes in golden beams as I signed the forms that would restart my life. You've been away from the program for quite some time, Ms. Bennett, the advisor said, reviewing my file with studious care. But your previous academic record is impressive, straight A's in your clinical rotations. You'll need to take a placement exam to determine if any refresher courses are necessary before you rejoin the program. I understand completely, I replied, feeling a surge of excitement bubble up through the anxiety. I've already started reviewing my old textbooks and nursing journals. I'm ready for whatever it takes. As I walked across campus afterward, trailing my fingers along the brick buildings, I felt a sense of belonging that had been missing for years. The familiar scent of coffee from the student center, the distant laughter from the quad, the purposeful energy of people pursuing their dreams, this was where I was meant to be, following my own path instead of living in service to someone else's demands. My real estate business would need significant adjustments to accommodate my class schedule, but I had already started planning the transition. I'd focus on fewer clients, concentrate exclusively on high-value properties where my commission would be substantial, and hire a part-time assistant to handle paperwork and preliminary showings. I'd already called 3 promising candidates, including a business student named Zoe who seemed perfect for the role. My income would be reduced, at least temporarily, but without my mother's considerable expenses, I could manage comfortably. When I returned to my apartment, a formal-looking envelope awaited me in the mail. My stomach tightened as I recognized the insurance company's logo. Inside was a letter addressed to my mother, mistakenly sent to my address. It detailed the changes to her coverage and the significant increase in premiums now that I was no longer serving as guarantor. The cold, bureaucratic language laid out exactly how much more she would need to pay each month, a staggering amount on a retired teacher's pension. I should have felt guilty. Instead, I felt a complicated mix of vindication and relief. The consequences of her actions and mine were real now, not just theoretical. I carefully placed the letter on my counter, planning to forward it to her tomorrow. My phone rang with Megan's custom ringtone, "Truth Hurts" by Lizzo, a recent change that made me smile despite everything. "Olivia, have you seen what's happening in the family group chat?" she asked without preamble, her voice tense with indignation. "I left all those chats days ago," I admitted, sinking onto my couch. I couldn't take the constant notifications and judgments. "Well, you're missing quite the performance. Your mom is telling everyone you've had some kind of mental breakdown. She's saying you've been under extreme stress from your failing business, and that's why you're acting out and turning against family." I could hear the air quotes in Megan's voice. She's completely twisting everything around to make herself the victim. I sighed, unsurprised yet still somehow disappointed. Classic deflection and narrative control. She's always been good at that. "That's not all," Megan continued, her voice dropping. "She didn't realize I was still in the chat because I've been quiet, and she's convinced Aunt Diana to let her move in temporarily until she sorts out her medical situation." She's already talking about needing her room redecorated to accommodate her special needs. Of course she has, I said, shaking my head at the predictability of it all. Mom's always been remarkably skilled at finding someone new to rescue her when her previous support system fails. I just hope Diana knows what she's getting into. After hanging up, I opened my laptop and found myself staring at the video file Megan had sent, the TikTok live that had changed everything. I hadn't watched it since that first devastating viewing in the restaurant. My finger hovered over the play button, temptation pulsing through me. There was undeniable power in this recording, power to show everyone exactly who my mother was behind closed doors, to vindicate myself in the face of her carefully crafted lies. But did I truly need that vindication? The family members willing to believe her narrative without even asking for my side of the story, were they really worth trying to convince? I closed the laptop without playing the video, surprising myself with the decision. I had the evidence if I needed it, but right now I had more important things to focus on. My nursing application was complete, I'd scheduled my placement exam for next week, and for the first time in years, I was planning for my future, not managing someone else's manufactured crisis. The path ahead felt both terrifying and exhilarating, exactly how growth should feel. 2 weeks later, the insurance letter sat on my counter, a tangible reminder of the changes I'd set in motion. The company logo stared back at me, almost judgmental. After a moment's consideration, I addressed a new envelope to my mother's actual residence at my aunt's house, placed the letter inside, and added a short note on a crisp note card. This was sent to my address by mistake. I suggest you read it carefully. No signature, no emotion, just facts and the implied consequences of her actions. As I slipped the envelope into the mailbox at the corner of my street, I felt another piece of my burden lift away, like shedding weight I'd carried for so long I'd forgotten it wasn't part of my natural body. The consequences of her choices were now hers to bear, not mine. The thought was both terrifying and liberating. 2 weeks passed in relative calm, a rare experience in my adult life. I threw myself into preparations for nursing school, studying pathophysiology and pharmacology during every spare moment between property showings and client meetings. My dining table transformed from a command center for my mother's medical care to a study haven covered with textbooks, highlighters, and flashcards. The placement exam was scheduled for Friday, and I felt a growing confidence with each practice test I completed. The migraine headaches that had plagued me for years were becoming less frequent. Then came the ambush. I was just finishing a successful showing of a luxury lakefront property in Winnetka, saying goodbye to potential buyers who seemed genuinely interested, when I spotted them in my rearview mirror, my mother and Aunt Diana, waiting beside Diana's Mercedes in the parking lot. My mother leaned dramatically on her cane, her posture designed to evoke maximum sympathy. My first instinct was to drive away, to escape the confrontation I knew was coming. My hands tightened on the steering wheel. But they had clearly seen me, and Diana was already waving. Running would only postpone the inevitable and make me look guilty of something. I took a deep breath, fixed my professional smile in place, and stepped out of my car. "Olivia," my mother said, her voice sickly sweet with a theatrical tremor. "We need to talk, sweetheart." Up close, I could see the calculated dishevelment. Her normally perfect hair was deliberately unstyled, her makeup minimal except for the dark circles under her eyes that looked suspiciously enhanced. She leaned heavily on her cane, a prop she typically only used when she wanted to emphasize her condition for maximum effect. "I have nothing to say," I replied, keys clutched so tightly in my hand that they left imprints on my palm. The smell of Diana's expensive perfume mingled with the crisp autumn air. Aunt Diana stepped forward, her face a mask of righteous concern. "Your mother is struggling terribly, Olivia. Her medication costs have tripled, and she can't get appointments with her specialists anymore. She was denied a prescription refill yesterday. Is that really what you wanted? To punish your own mother? What I wanted, I said carefully, measuring each word, was to be treated with basic respect and appreciation. What I wanted was recognition for 5 years of sacrifice and support. What I wanted was a mother who didn't call me a desperate failure and pathetic behind my back while drinking wine I paid for. My mother's face paled, the practiced expression of suffering momentarily replaced by genuine shock. What are you talking about? I saw the video, Mom. Megan's TikTok live from the family dinner. I met her gaze steadily, refusing to look away as I had so many times before. I heard every single thing you said about me, about my career, about my life choices, all while cashing my checks. A flash of recognition crossed her face, quickly replaced by defensive anger. You're completely twisting things out of context. I was just venting a little frustration after a bad day. Everyone does that. You've never complained about anything in your life? Never said something in the heat of the moment? Aunt Diana looked confused, glancing between us. What video, Eleanor? What is she talking about? I almost laughed at the irony. My mother hadn't even told her closest allies about the live stream, probably hoping I would never discover it. Even now, she was controlling the narrative. Show her the video if you want, I said to my mother, gesturing toward Diana's phone peeking from her designer purse. Or don't. It doesn't change anything. I've made my decision, and I'm not going back on it. My mother switched tactics instantly, her voice breaking as tears welled in her eyes. I'm your mother, Olivia. After everything I've done for you, how can you abandon me when I need you most? Is this how I raised you to behave? Something snapped inside me, a dam breaking after years of pressure. 5 years of suppressed resentment boiled to the surface, hot and unstoppable. Everything you've done for me? I echoed incredulously, my voice rising despite my efforts to remain calm. Let me tell you what I've done for you, Mom. I put my entire life on hold, my education, my relationship, my future. I spent over $120,000 on your care, money I'll never get back. I drove you to every appointment, managed every prescription, fought with insurance companies on your behalf, maxed out my credit cards for your treatments, and in return, you called me pathetic. You mocked my career, the career I built specifically to support you. My hands were shaking, but my voice remained firm as I continued. I sent proof to everyone in the family, every payment, every appointment, every sacrifice documented in black and white. So don't stand there in your performance of suffering and act like I'm the villain in this story. Aunt Diana was looking at my mother differently now, doubt creeping into her expression, her perfectly maintained eyebrows drawing together. Eleanor, she said slowly, what exactly was in this video? What did you say about Olivia? My mother ignored her completely, focusing her desperation on me. I'm sorry if I hurt your feelings with a few careless words, but this is an extreme overreaction. I'm facing serious health complications. Do you want me to end up in a state facility? Is that your goal? I'm perfectly aware of your condition, I replied with a calmness I didn't entirely feel. I've studied it extensively and provided you with 5 years of continuous, comprehensive support. Now it's someone else's turn. The family can share the responsibility, or you can use your teacher's pension and savings like you should have been doing all along. I turned to Aunt Diana, my patience wearing thin. She's living with you now, right? Has she asked you for money yet? How many doctor's appointments have you driven her to in the past 2 weeks? How many prescriptions have you picked up? How many times has she called you at work with an emergency that somehow resolves itself when you rush home? Aunt Diana's silence and widening eyes were answer enough. "That's what I thought," I said, turning back toward my car. "I wish you both well, but I won't be manipulated or guilted anymore. I'm done." "This isn't over," my mother called after me, her voice hardening as her performance failed to achieve the desired effect. "You can't just walk away from family. Blood is thicker than water." I paused with my hand on the car door, looking back at her one last time. "You're right about one thing, Mom. Family doesn't walk away from family, but family also doesn't tear each other down or take advantage of each other for years on end. So maybe ask yourself who really walked away first." As I drove off, I glanced in my rearview mirror. My mother was gesturing wildly, clearly berating Aunt Diana for not backing her up more forcefully. Some things never change, I thought. But I had changed, fundamentally and permanently, and as I headed home to continue studying for my nursing exam, I realized I didn't feel guilty anymore. The weight of obligation had lifted. For the first time in years, I felt free. 3 months passed in a productive blur of activity. I aced my nursing placement exam with scores high enough to skip the refresher courses, enrolled in the accelerated program for students returning to education, and completely reorganized my real estate business to accommodate my new schedule. I hired Zoe, a bright business student, as my part-time assistant to handle paperwork and coordinate showings when I was in class. She brought fresh energy and social media expertise that actually increased my client base despite my reduced hours. The transition wasn't seamless by any means. There were late nights of studying after long days showing properties, scheduling conflicts that required creative solutions, and the occasional bout of self-doubt when exams loomed. But each small victory, each clinical skill mastered, and each successful property closing reaffirmed that I'd made the right choice. The weight I'd been carrying for years had transformed into purpose, and I approached each day with renewed energy and focus. My family situation had reached an uneasy stalemate. After our confrontation in the parking lot, my mother had apparently shown her true colors to Aunt Diana, who quietly reached out to me a week later, suggesting we meet for coffee at a neutral location. "I had no idea what you'd been dealing with all these years," she admitted, stirring her latte nervously. "Eleanor told me you were being difficult and selfish when you stopped helping her. I should have asked for your side of the story before judging." "It's okay," I replied, surprising myself with how much I meant it. Mom has always been exceptionally good at controlling the narrative. She had me fooled for years too. The Chicago Real Estate Association's annual awards ceremony wasn't something I'd ever been able to attend in previous years. I'd always been too busy managing my mother's care or too exhausted to network after hours. But when my broker nominated me for the Resilience in Real Estate Award, recognizing agents who overcame significant challenges while maintaining their business, I was genuinely moved by the gesture. "You're a shoo-in," my colleague Lucas insisted during our monthly team meeting. "You've closed more luxury listings than anyone else while starting nursing school and completely restructuring your business model. If that's not the definition of resilience, I don't know what is." I didn't expect to win against the other accomplished nominees, but I was looking forward to the ceremony, a chance to celebrate how far I'd come both professionally and personally, to exist in a space where I was valued for my achievements. The evening of the ceremony arrived crisp and clear. I found myself in the grand ballroom of the Drake Hotel, surrounded by Chicago's real estate elite. I wore a midnight blue gown I'd bought specifically for the occasion, my first non-work-related splurge in years. The fabric felt luxurious against my skin as I accepted a glass of champagne from a passing waiter and mingled with colleagues, reconnecting with industry contacts I hadn't seen in ages. "Olivia Bennett," called out a familiar voice. I turned to see Margaret Winters, one of the most successful brokers in the Midwest. I was hoping to see you here tonight. I've been hearing fantastic things about your work with those lakefront properties in Winnetka. We chatted easily about recent market trends and property values, and I found myself fully engaged in the conversation, present and articulate, a welcome change from the distracted, overwhelmed person I'd been for years, always waiting for the next crisis call from my mother. My phone vibrated in my clutch. I ignored it at first, fully immersed in the professional moment I was enjoying. When it vibrated again a minute later, I politely excused myself and stepped aside to check the screen. 5 missed calls from a number I didn't recognize, and a text message, "It's Megan," using Uncle Victor's phone. "Emergency with your mom. Call back ASAP." A knot formed in my stomach, familiar but no longer debilitating. I stepped into a quiet hallway and returned the call. "Megan, what's going on?" "I'm so sorry to bother you," Megan said, her voice tense with genuine concern. "I'm at Northwestern Memorial with your mom. She fell at Aunt Diana's house, and they think it might be a reaction to her new medication regimen. She's asking for you." I closed my eyes, leaning against the wall of the elegant hallway, waiting for the familiar wave of guilt and obligation to wash over me. It came, but it was different now, manageable, not overwhelming. A feeling to acknowledge rather than one that controlled me. "Is she stable?" I asked, keeping my voice level. "Yes, totally stable. They're just keeping her overnight for observation because of her medication changes." I didn't even want to call and interrupt your night, but Uncle Victor practically forced me to. He took my phone and everything. I heard muffled voices in the background, then a shuffling sound as the phone changed hands. "Olivia, Victor here." His voice was stern and authoritative, the same tone he'd used with his children when they were teenagers. "Look, I know things have been difficult between you and your mother, but she needs you right now. The doctors have questions about her medical history and medication allergies that none of us can answer properly." As he spoke, I glanced through the doorway and saw the ceremony attendees moving into the main ballroom. The lights were dimming for the awards presentation, which would be starting any minute. Through the crowd, I spotted Lucas giving me a questioning look. "I understand the situation," I said, making my decision with surprising clarity, "but I'm at an important work event right now, the awards ceremony I mentioned last time we spoke. I can come by the hospital afterward." "This is your mother we're talking about." Victor's voice hardened with disapproval. "Surely whatever industry party you're attending can wait. Family comes first, Olivia." The old Olivia would have acquiesced immediately, apologizing profusely while gathering her things, abandoning her own achievement for her mother's latest crisis. But I wasn't that person anymore. "I'll be there in about 2 hours," I said firmly, without apology. "Please tell the doctors I'll answer any questions about her medical history then. And Victor, thank you for being there for her, I genuinely appreciate it." I ended the call before he could protest further and took a deep, centering breath. As I turned to rejoin the ceremony, I caught my reflection in a decorative mirror hanging in the hallway, shoulders back, chin high, eyes clear and focused. For the first time in years, I truly recognized myself. The woman staring back at me wasn't a shadow or a caretaker or an extension of someone else's needs, she was whole and determined. I slipped back into the ballroom just as the president of the association approached the podium. Lucas had saved me a seat at our brokerage's table, and I slid into it with a grateful smile as the lights dimmed further. "And now, the moment we've all been waiting for," the president announced after acknowledging the other award categories. "The winner of this year's Resilience in Real Estate Award, recognizing exceptional achievement in the face of significant challenges." I held my breath, not daring to hope. "Olivia Bennett of Lakefront Luxury Properties." The room erupted in applause, the sound washing over me in waves. For a moment, I sat frozen in shock, my heart pounding in my chest. I genuinely hadn't expected to win against the other accomplished nominees. Lucas nudged me with his elbow, grinning broadly. "Told you. Now get up there." As I rose on slightly unsteady legs and made my way to the stage, familiar faces smiled at me from every table, colleagues, mentors, and even competitors, all united in recognizing what I'd accomplished. The validation felt almost overwhelming after years of having my achievements dismissed or minimized. The crystal trophy felt substantial in my hands, catching the stage lights as I approached the microphone. Looking out at the audience, I saw nothing but support and professional respect, such a stark contrast to the family dinner table where I'd been belittled. "Thank you," I began, my voice steadier than I expected. "This recognition means more to me than I can possibly express. The past few years have been profoundly challenging, balancing a demanding career with significant personal obligations. There were many days, and even more nights, when I wasn't sure I could keep going." I paused, thinking of the countless hours I'd spent researching treatment options for my mother, the early mornings rushing to prepare for showings after sleepless nights filled with worry and paperwork. But real estate isn't just about selling properties or closing deals, it's fundamentally about resilience, adapting to changing markets, overcoming obstacles, and finding solutions when everything seems impossible. Those same skills helped me navigate my personal challenges and eventually find my way back to my original passion, nursing. The crowd murmured with interest at this revelation, and I saw several people lean forward in their chairs. I'm now pursuing my nursing degree while continuing to serve my real estate clients, and I've never been more fulfilled professionally. So this award isn't just for my work in real estate, it's a reminder to all of us that we can reinvent ourselves at any point in our lives. Sometimes the biggest challenges lead to our most authentic paths. Thank you for this tremendous honor. The applause seemed even louder as I walked back to my seat, where Lucas and our other colleagues congratulated me with enthusiastic handshakes and hugs. As the ceremony wrapped up, several people approached to ask about my unusual career combination, genuinely interested in my unconventional path and how I was managing both pursuits. By the time I checked my phone again, it was nearly 9:30 p.m. I had 3 more missed calls from Uncle Victor and a text from Megan, "She's totally stable." The doctor already answered most questions. "Take your time and congrats on your award." I gathered my things, said my goodbyes to colleagues who were heading to the after-party, and headed for my car, the trophy carefully wrapped in tissue paper inside my tote bag. Its weight felt satisfying, tangible proof of my value in the professional world. The hospital was a 25-minute drive across the city, and I used the time to mentally prepare for the inevitable confrontation. I turned on a meditation podcast I'd recently discovered, letting the calming voice guide my breathing and settle my nerves. By the time I pulled into the hospital parking garage, I felt centered and clear-headed. When I arrived at the hospital room, I found my mother sitting up in bed, looking remarkably alert and well-groomed for someone who had supposedly experienced a serious medical emergency. Her hair was freshly brushed, and she appeared to be wearing subtle makeup. Uncle Victor sat in a visitor's chair beside her, scrolling through his phone, while Megan stood awkwardly near the window, relief evident in her face when she saw me. Finally, my mother said as I entered, her tone acidic with practiced martyrdom, "Nice of you to fit us into your busy social schedule." I set my tote bag down on a nearby chair, the corner of the award partially visible through the tissue paper. "Hello, Mom. I came as soon as my professional event concluded. How are you feeling now?" "How do you think I'm feeling?" Her voice rose dramatically. I collapsed. "I could have died, and you were too busy partying to care." What kind of daughter chooses a work party over her sick mother? Uncle Victor cleared his throat, clearly uncomfortable with her theatrical display. The doctor said it was likely a mild reaction to the new medication regimen. They've already adjusted the dosage, and she should be perfectly fine to go home tomorrow morning. Nothing life-threatening. I nodded, keeping my expression neutral and professional, the same face I used with difficult clients. That's excellent news. I'm genuinely glad it wasn't more serious. My mother's face contorted with frustration at my calm demeanor. She'd clearly expected tears, guilt, or immediate capitulation. This wouldn't have happened if you hadn't abandoned me. My new insurance is practically useless. I can't afford half my medications, and these new doctors don't understand my condition like my specialists did. Diana is trying, but she doesn't know my medical needs like you do. I'm sincerely sorry to hear that you're struggling with the transition, I said with genuine compassion but unwavering boundaries. It must be difficult adjusting to new healthcare providers and insurance coverage. My measured, empathetic response seemed to infuriate her further. Is that all you have to say, after what you've put me through these past weeks? She demanded, voice rising. I glanced at Megan, whose expression reflected a mix of embarrassment and quiet support. She gave me a subtle nod of encouragement. Mom, I said quietly but firmly, I supported you completely for 5 years. I put my entire life on hold to make sure you had the best possible care. I did everything within my power to help you, and in return, you called me a desperate failure to our entire family. You mocked the career that paid for your treatments. You laughed at my dreams and sacrifices while accepting my money. Uncle Victor frowned, his confusion evident. What are you talking about, Olivia? What video? Megan stepped forward, her phone already in hand. The TikTok live, Uncle Victor. The one I accidentally recorded during Thanksgiving dinner 6 weeks ago. Aunt Eleanor started talking about Olivia when she thought she couldn't hear. She looked toward my mother. Didn't you tell anyone about that? About what you said? My mother's face drained of color, the carefully applied blush now standing out against her pallor. That's completely irrelevant and taken out of context. Olivia is twisting a few careless comments to justify her selfish behavior and abandonment. Without a word, I reached into my tote bag and pulled out the trophy, setting it deliberately on the bedside table. The crystal caught the harsh hospital lighting, the engraving clearly visible, Resilience in Real Estate Award Olivia Bennett. I won this award tonight, I explained to Uncle Victor, whose eyes widened in surprise. For maintaining a successful business despite significant personal and professional challenges. Those challenges included supporting Mom financially and medically for 5 years while she consistently belittled my achievements and mocked my career behind my back, the very career I built specifically to support her. Understanding slowly dawned on Uncle Victor's face as he looked from the trophy to my mother's defensive expression. The pieces were finally fitting together for him, the spreadsheets I'd sent, the video Megan had recorded, the trophy that validated my professional worth. I didn't come here to argue or to hurt anyone, I continued, my voice softening. I came because you needed medical information, and despite everything, I wanted to make sure Mom was okay. I don't wish her ill, I never have. I just couldn't keep sacrificing my entire life for someone who not only didn't appreciate it, but actively undermined my self-worth at every opportunity. The room fell silent except for the steady beep of the heart monitor. For once, my mother had no sharp retort ready, no manipulation tactic prepared. She simply stared at the trophy, visible proof of the success she had dismissed so callously as worthless. The evidence of her misjudgment sat gleaming on the sterile hospital table. I should go, I said softly after the silence had stretched uncomfortably long. I have an early clinical rotation tomorrow morning. "Megan, can I give you a ride home? It's late for public transportation." "Yes, please," she said quickly, relief evident in her voice as she gathered her jacket and backpack. As we left the room, I heard Uncle Victor speaking to my mother in a hushed, questioning tone, his usual deference replaced by something more probing. The conversation I'd been avoiding for months was finally happening, but this time, I wouldn't be the one fighting to be heard or struggling to justify my worth. I had said my piece, shown my evidence, and now I was walking away, head high and conscience clear. 3 months later, I stood in my crisp white nursing uniform, hands steady as I administered N4 to my patient, a woman in her 70s with kind eyes who reminded me a little of my father's sister. My clinical instructor nodded approvingly as she observed my technique. "Excellent work, Bennett. Your clinical skills are advancing remarkably quickly," she said, making a note on her clipboard. "Your previous experience with medical administration is really showing." I smiled as I secured the line and adjusted the drip rate. "Thank you. It feels like everything's finally clicking into place. Like I'm exactly where I should be." After completing my shift at the teaching hospital, I headed to my car in the staff parking lot, pausing to check my phone in the cold winter air. A text from Megan lit up my screen. "Your interview is blowing up online. 35K views already and growing. You're like, actually famous now." I laughed, shaking my head in amazement as I unlocked my car. Last week, I'd been interviewed by the Chicago Medical Review about career changers entering nursing later in life. The interviewer had been particularly interested in how my real estate experience had prepared me for healthcare. Both fields require exceptional attention to detail, strong communication skills, and the ability to guide people through major life transitions, I'd explained, choosing my words carefully. And both taught me the crucial importance of professional boundaries, something every healthcare provider needs to master for their own well-being and their patients' safety. As I drove home through the early evening darkness, my phone rang through the car's Bluetooth system. An unknown number flashed on the dashboard display. "Hello, Olivia speaking," I answered, keeping my eyes on the road. "Hello, Olivia. It's Victor." My uncle's voice sounded hesitant, almost tentative, so different from his usual authoritative tone. "Do you have a minute to talk?" I tensed slightly, instinctively bracing for bad news. "Is everything okay?" Yes, everything's fine," he assured me quickly. I saw your interview in the medical review. It was quite inspiring, actually. Very well spoken." "Thank you," I replied, genuinely surprised by the compliment after months of minimal contact with my mother's side of the family. "Your mother saw it too," he added quietly after a brief pause. I waited, my hands tightening slightly on the steering wheel, bracing myself for news of her latest criticism or complaint. Old habits die hard. "She didn't say much," Victor continued, filling my silence, "but I think seeing you in that nursing uniform, speaking so confidently about your new path, I think it finally made things real for her. You really are doing it, becoming a nurse just like you always wanted, despite everything." I pulled into my driveway, letting the car idle as I processed his words. Snowflakes were beginning to fall, catching in the glow of my headlights. "I'm proud of you, Olivia," he said, his voice uncharacteristically emotional. "And I'm sorry I didn't see what was happening sooner. What you were dealing with all those years." The simple acknowledgement brought unexpected tears to my eyes. I blinked them away, watching the snowflakes melt on my windshield. "Thank you, Victor. That means a lot to hear." After we hung up, I sat for a moment in my quiet car, reflecting on how much had changed in less than a year. Inside my apartment, the trophy from the real estate award sat on my bookshelf now, next to my growing collection of nursing textbooks, physical reminders of my past achievements and future goals, both equally valid parts of my identity. My mother and I still weren't speaking, but that was okay. I had finally stopped expecting validation from someone incapable of giving it. Instead, I found it in my own accomplishments, in the grateful smiles of patients who thanked me for my care, in the professional recognition that validated the new path I'd chosen for myself. As I entered my apartment, dropping my keys in the bowl by the door, I smiled at the organized chaos of my living room, half nursing study center, half real estate office. Tonight I would review my pharmacology notes for next week's exam, then maybe call Megan later to catch up on family news. Tomorrow, I had a high-end property showing scheduled between my classes. My life was full, purposeful, and entirely my own. The phone call from Victor was an unexpected grace note, appreciated but not necessary for my happiness or sense of self-worth. Whether my mother ever came to terms with my decision didn't define me anymore. I had reclaimed my path, my future, and most importantly, my sense of self-worth. And that, I realized as I settled at my desk with my textbooks, was the greatest victory of all. "How could you be so selfish?" my father shouted, his face flushing crimson as he paced across the wooden floor of their Wisconsin lake house. His footsteps echoed against the vaulted ceiling as he gestured wildly toward me. "Vanessa needs that money for her client networking event. You know how important these connections are for her real estate business. You make plenty with all those after-school tutoring sessions." I stood frozen by the kitchen island, my fingers still clutching the Homeowners Association special assessment notice. The crumpled paper trembled slightly in my hand. What was supposed to be a pleasant Memorial Day weekend family gathering had transformed into an ambush about my financial contributions. My name is Audrey Mercer, and at 34, I've built a respectable career as a high school English teacher. I wasn't raised with privilege. Everything I have, I've earned through years of education, student loan debt, and dedicating countless evenings to grading papers and tutoring struggling students. For the past 5 years, I'd been quietly paying the Homeowners Association fees on my parents' lake house, covering my younger sister Vanessa's car payments, and funding family gatherings without a single complaint. I'd even picked up extra tutoring hours to make it all work. It was my way of supporting the family that raised me, or at least that's what I'd told myself. "Dad, I've been covering everything for years," I finally managed, my voice steadier than the churning in my stomach. I placed the assessment notice on the granite countertop and took a deep breath. The association fees, Vanessa's business networking events, Mom's medical treatments that insurance rejected. I've never once asked for anything in return, but on a teacher's salary, I just can't keep doing this forever. I'm putting off buying my own home because of these expenses. My mother stood by the sink, methodically drying a dish that was already dry, her eyes fixed on the task as though it required her complete concentration. She wouldn't meet my gaze, and somehow that silent avoidance stung more than my father's angry outburst. "We sacrificed everything for your education," Dad continued, completely disregarding what I'd just said. His voice took on that familiar tone he used to use when lecturing clients at the bank. "And now that we need your help, you're abandoning the family while your sister is finally building her client base in real estate." That's when I noticed a folder on the breakfast bar, partially concealed beneath the morning newspaper. The edge of what looked like an official financial document was visible, and I could make out the words College Fund and Vanessa Mercer in bold type. My chest tightened as though someone had cinched a belt around my ribs. I reached for the folder before my father could intervene. "Audrey, that's private financial information," he snapped, lunging forward, but he was too late. I was already scanning the investment statement, my hands shaking as the truth revealed itself in stark numbers and cold, technical language. My father had established a substantial college and postgraduate fund for Vanessa, only Vanessa. The same father who had told me repeatedly that there wasn't enough money to help with my master's degree, forcing me to work multiple jobs while completing my education. The same father who now expected me to finance their lakefront lifestyle while secretly ensuring my sister's financial security. When exactly were you planning to tell me about this? I whispered, a strange calm washing over me despite the tremor in my hands. The puzzle pieces of my entire life suddenly clicked into place: the constant favoritism, the disparate expectations, the endless financial demands disguised as family duty. In that moment, I knew everything was about to change between us. My father yanked the investment statement from my grip, but it was too late. The figures were branded into my memory: $280,000 set aside for Vanessa's education and future, while I'd received barely $30,000 toward my undergraduate degree. All this while I'd been repeatedly told that family finances were stretched thin whenever I needed help. "You weren't meant to see those statements," he muttered, hastily folding the papers and stuffing them back into the folder. "Obviously," I replied, my voice hollow as an empty classroom. "I guess that explains why I'm still paying off student loans for my master's degree while tutoring teenagers every afternoon." Growing up, the pattern had always been painfully consistent. Vanessa got piano lessons and summer camps while I was told to focus on scholarship applications. She received a new car for her 16th birthday. I took public transportation until I saved enough from my weekend library job to buy a second-hand Toyota with a failing transmission. When college decisions came around, Vanessa attended an expensive private university with full family support, while I cobbled together scholarships, grants, and worked at a coffee shop between classes. I'd always rationalized it as changing financial circumstances or different parenting approaches based on our personalities. I never wanted to confront what was now undeniable: my parents simply valued Vanessa more. "Sweetheart," my mother finally spoke, setting down her dish towel and approaching cautiously as though I might shatter. Her voice carried that gentle, placating tone I now recognized as subtle manipulation. "Your sister needs more guidance than you do. You've always been so independent, so responsible with your classroom and your students. We're so proud of how well you've managed on your own." The twisted logic felt like a slap across my face. I was being punished for my competence and self-reliance, while Vanessa was rewarded for her dependency and financial irresponsibility. "All those times I asked for help," I said slowly, painful memories surfacing one by one. "When I was working 2 jobs during grad school and falling asleep grading papers, when my car broke down the week before finals and I couldn't afford repairs, when I needed the security deposit for my first apartment after college. You said you couldn't possibly help, but the money was there all along. It was just reserved for Vanessa." Dad shifted his weight uncomfortably, adjusting his watch, the same expensive brand he'd given Vanessa for Christmas, while I received a scarf. "Financial planning isn't that straightforward, Audrey. We had to make decisions about the future." "Just not my future," I replied, the words tasting bitter. I mentally calculated all the payments I'd made on their behalf over the years. The homeowners association fees on this lake house alone were $9,200 annually. I'd covered them for 5 years straight, plus countless other expenses. I'd even paid $12,000 for dock repairs last summer without complaint, canceling my plans for a much-needed vacation, all while they were secretly establishing my sister's financial security. "The Homeowners Association's special assessment is due before the end of June," Dad said abruptly, changing the subject as he slid the bill back across the counter toward me. "And they've increased the regular fees again this year. Something about new landscaping for the community entrance." I stared at him in disbelief. After what I had just discovered, he still expected me to pay? The entitlement was absolutely stunning. Something shifted inside me then, a fundamental realignment of my priorities. I'd been manipulated and taken advantage of for years, but that ended today. "I'll handle it," I said quietly, picking up the bill. My father's shoulders visibly relaxed, completely missing the resolve hardening in my eyes. The drive back to my small house in suburban Chicago felt endless. The familiar neighborhoods I usually found so comforting seemed to mock me with their normalcy as the evening shadows lengthened. I'd been such a fool. Once home, I ignored my buzzing phone, undoubtedly my father ensuring I wouldn't back out of paying the assessment, and pulled out my laptop. With trembling fingers, I opened a spreadsheet I'd meticulously maintained for years but never imagined I'd actually need. Family financial contributions.xlsx. The document that loaded on my screen represented thousands of dollars I'd sacrificed for my family's comfort. 5 years of homeowners association payments, $46,000. Vanessa's car payments I'd taken over when she claimed she couldn't fit them into her budget despite her real estate commissions, $13,680. The dock repairs at the lake house, $12,000. Medical treatments for my mother's arthritis not covered by insurance, $8,900. Family gatherings I'd funded while pretending they were simply gifts, $18,400. The total made me physically ill, $98,980 over 5 years, all while my parents secretly funneled money into a substantial college fund for my sister. I scrolled through digital copies of check images, bank transfers, and grateful text messages from my family thanking me for my generosity. Each one now felt like damning evidence of my own naivety and their manipulation. My phone chimed with a text from Vanessa. "Dad says you're being difficult about the homeowners association bill. Don't be selfish, Audrey. You know how much we all love the lake house." I laughed bitterly, the sound echoing through my empty living room. Of course she would take their side without question. Why wouldn't she? She had benefited from their favoritism her entire life, from childhood piano lessons to her fully funded college education. Another message arrived, this one from my father. "We're counting on you for the association payment. The community has already sent a reminder notice. Don't let the family down." No thank you, no acknowledgement of the nearly $100,000 I'd already contributed over the years. Just the entitled expectation that I would continue financing their lakefront lifestyle while they secured my sister's financial future behind my back. The next morning, I called in sick to school, something I rarely did, even when genuinely ill, and drove to see Marcus Wong, the financial advisor who had helped me organize my modest investments and retirement planning when I started putting away a portion of my teaching salary 3 years ago. "This is quite an extensive list," Marcus said, carefully reviewing my spreadsheet of family contributions. His eyebrows rose visibly as he scrolled to the bottom total. "And you've never requested any form of repayment or recognition?" "Their family," I said with a shrug that belied my inner turmoil. "I thought I was helping people who needed it." Marcus removed his glasses and fixed me with a compassionate but serious look. "Audrey, your generosity is commendable, especially on a teacher's salary, but this arrangement is completely unsustainable. You're compromising your own financial security while enabling unhealthy dependency. This situation isn't good for anyone involved." "I see that now," I said quietly, fidgeting with the strap of my purse. "I just discovered they've created a substantial college fund for my sister, over $280,000, while letting me deplete my savings to support the family's expenses." Marcus's expression darkened as he leaned forward. "That significantly changes the entire situation." For the next 2 hours, we developed a detailed strategy. I would need proper documentation, notarized statements of all my contributions, formal receipts, bank records, text message evidence, a complete accounting of everything I'd given. Marcus recommended his colleague, a forensic accountant named Jasmine Chen, who specialized in financial disputes and family financial analysis. "Are you absolutely certain you want to pursue this?" Marcus asked as our meeting concluded, his tone serious. Family conflicts involving money can become extremely ugly very quickly. I thought about the investment statements showing my sister's college fund, about years of being told there wasn't enough money to help with my master's degree while Vanessa received everything, about the homeowners association bill my father had slid across the counter with the casual expectation that I would handle it without question. "I'm certain," I said, my voice stronger and more resolute than it had been in days. "It's time they understood exactly what I've been contributing all these years, and what happens when those contributions stop." As I walked out of Marcus's office into the bright June sunshine, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years regarding my family, a sense of control and personal power. 1 week after discovering the college fund documents, I sat in Jasmine Chen's downtown office, surrounded by neatly organized stacks of financial records. The forensic accountant had been methodically organizing and analyzing my contributions to the Mercer family over the past 5 years, creating a meticulous paper trail. "Your documentation is impressively comprehensive," Jasmine noted, sorting through bank statements and receipts with practiced efficiency. "Most clients don't maintain records with this level of detail. It's made my job much easier." My years of organizing student papers and tracking classroom budgets had instilled good record-keeping habits. Every transaction, every transfer, every expense was meticulously tracked and categorized with a teacher's attention to detail. "So what's the final damage?" I asked, bracing myself for the answer while gripping the armrests of my chair. Jasmine slid a professionally bound document across her desk. "The final calculation is significantly worse than your initial estimate, $118,745. I felt my chest tighten as I stared at the figure. The additional $19,765 represents opportunity cost, essentially interest you've lost by diverting these funds from your retirement accounts and potential home down payment savings," she explained, pointing to a detailed chart. "Based on the performance of similar teacher retirement portfolios over this period, this is actually a conservative estimate." I nodded slowly, feeling a complex mixture of vindication and grief wash over me. The numbers transformed the betrayal from an emotional hurt into something tangible and undeniable. "What are my options going forward?" I asked, my teacher's instinct for practical next steps kicking in. "That really depends on what outcome you're seeking," Jasmine replied, folding her hands on her desk. "If you're pursuing legal restitution, we could potentially build a case, though family financial matters can be complicated without formal written agreements. If you're simply documenting this for personal closure or as leverage in family discussions, we can prepare a comprehensive financial statement with official certification." "The second option," I said after a moment's consideration. "I'm not looking to sue my family. I just want them to recognize what they've done." As Jasmine prepared the official documentation, my phone buzzed repeatedly with new messages. "Dad, still haven't received the HOA payment. Due date is this Friday. Vanessa, Dad says you're being difficult about money after everything they've done for you over the years. Seriously, Audrey? You're going to let a family tradition die over a few $1,000s?" I silenced my phone without responding, placing it face down on the desk. Let them wonder what was happening. Let them experience a fraction of the uncertainty I'd felt all these years. 3 days later, I received a notarized financial analysis from Jasmine's office. The professional document detailed every dollar I'd contributed to my family over the past 5 years, categorized by recipient, purpose, and date. It included calculations of lost retirement savings and a statement from Marcus Wong verifying the legitimacy of the analysis. That same evening, my mother called. "Audrey," she began, her voice carefully controlled to hide any tension, though I could hear the strain beneath the surface. "Your father is very concerned about the homeowners association payment. The due date is next week, and you know how they start adding late fees immediately." "I'm aware of when it's due, Mom," I replied evenly. "Well, will you be handling it? You've always been so responsible about these things." "The whole family is counting on the lake house for the 4th of July gathering." The casual assumption in her voice ignited something deep within me. 5 years of payments without a single genuine thank you. 5 years of sacrificing my own financial goals while they secretly built my sister's financial security. "Not this time." "No," I said quietly, letting the word hang in the silence that followed. "What do you mean, no?" Her voice rose slightly in pitch. "I mean, I'm not paying the homeowners association fees anymore, or any other family expenses," I stated firmly. But we're counting on that money. We've already allocated our funds elsewhere for the summer." Her voice had taken on a frantic edge now. "To Vanessa's investment accounts, you mean?" I asked pointedly. My words hung in the air between us. Another long, uncomfortable silence followed. "Your father mentioned that you saw those documents," she finally admitted. "Audrey, sweetheart, you have to understand." "I understand perfectly, Mom," I interrupted, my teacher's voice emerging, the tone I used when a student was making excuses for missing homework. "I understand that I've contributed nearly $120,000 to this family over the past 5 years, while you and Dad have been telling me there wasn't enough money to help with my master's degree or home down payment. I understand that I've been financing your lakefront lifestyle while you've been securing Vanessa's financial future." "That's not a fair characterization," she protested weakly. "No, it's not fair," I agreed. "And I'm done with it." I ended the call and turned my phone off completely, knowing the real storm was yet to come. My father wouldn't accept this change lying down. He'd always seen my financial support as an obligation, something I owed the family, rather than the generous gift it actually was. The next morning, I sat at my dining table with my laptop and made 3 significant changes to my financial life. First, I canceled the automatic payment for Vanessa's car. Second, I removed myself as an authorized payer on all family accounts. Third, I transferred $15,000 from my savings to a new account specifically designated Home Down Payment Fund. For the first time in years, I felt truly unburdened. The weight of constant family financial expectations lifted from my shoulders like the release of a heavy backpack after a long day of teaching. The fallout was swift and explosive. By noon, while I was on my lunch break between classes, my phone was bombarded with notifications. I finally turned it back on, watching the messages flood my screen with an unusual sense of detachment. Vanessa called 9 times before sending a series of increasingly panicked texts. "What the hell, Audrey? The bank says my car payment was declined. Are you trying to ruin my credit score? I have 3 property showings this weekend and need my car. Dad is absolutely livid. Fix this immediately." My father's messages were more direct and commanding. "Call me immediately. This behavior is completely unacceptable. You can't just abandon your responsibilities to this family after everything we've done for you." I ignored them all and focused on preparing for my afternoon classes. My AP literature students were discussing The Great Gatsby that day, and the irony of teaching about wealth and privilege while dealing with my own family's financial manipulation wasn't lost on me. Only after the final bell rang did I listen to the single voicemail my mother had left. "Audrey, please." Her voice wavered, thick with emotion. Your father is absolutely beside himself. The Homeowners Association notice arrived with a severe late fee warning. Vanessa can't make her car payment this month. She's worried about losing her vehicle and damaging her credit. We just don't understand why you're doing this. Whatever's upset you, surely we can discuss it like adults. Please call us back, sweetheart. No recognition of the college fund issue, no acknowledgement of 5 years of my financial support depleting my teacher's salary, just emotional manipulation to resume the status quo as quickly as possible. I was carefully drafting a measured response when my doorbell rang, followed by insistent knocking. Through the window, I glimpsed my father's car parked at the curb. My heart began racing. I'd never seen him this upset, not since I told him I was pursuing education instead of business like he'd wanted. Audrey, his voice boomed through the door. I know you're in there. We need to talk about this nonsense right now. My hands trembled slightly as I picked up my phone and texted my neighbor, a police officer who lived 2 doors down. My father is at my door, refusing to leave. Can you help? The pounding continued for several minutes before I heard another voice outside, my neighbor Jim's steady, authoritative tone. The knocking finally stopped, followed by the sound of car doors and an engine starting. 10 minutes later, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Cousin Ethan here. Just got a call from Uncle Lawrence, who saw your dad being asked to leave your property by a police officer. Are you all right? What's happening? I hadn't spoken to Ethan since the previous Thanksgiving. I texted back, I'm fine. Complicated family financial situation. His response caught me completely off guard. About time you stood up to them. The way they've treated you compared to Vanessa has been wrong for years. Everyone's noticed, but no one says anything. I stared at my phone, genuinely shocked. I'd always assumed no one else in the extended family had noticed the disparity in how we were treated. The validation from Ethan felt like a cool breeze on a stifling summer day, unexpected and deeply refreshing. My doorbell rang again at 7:30 p.m. This time when I checked through the peephole, I saw Vanessa standing there in her real estate blazer, arms crossed tightly over her chest, designer purse dangling from her wrist, foot tapping impatiently against my welcome mat. I hesitantly opened the door but remained firmly in the doorway, blocking entrance. What do you want, Vanessa? What do I want? She repeated, her voice rising incredulously. I want you to explain why you're suddenly acting completely irrational. My car payment was declined this morning. Dad says you're refusing to pay the lake house fees. My broker's open house is tomorrow, and I need my car to transport clients. That's correct, I said with the calm tone I use with particularly difficult parents during conferences. Why? What's suddenly gotten into you? Is this some kind of midlife crisis? Are you jealous because I'm finally building my client base? The issue is that I've contributed almost $120,000 to this family over the last 5 years while Dad has been secretly funding a substantial college account for you, I stated plainly, watching her expression change. Vanessa's face transformed in rapid succession, first genuine surprise, then a flicker of guilt, followed quickly by defensive indignation. That's completely different, she insisted, adjusting her blazer. The college fund is for my professional development. I need that security to build my real estate business. And I don't need security? I asked quietly. You've always called me the smart one, I continued, making air quotes, as if that explains everything. You think because I have a stable teaching job that I don't have financial needs or goals? I'm still paying off student loans for my master's degree at 34. While I pay your car payments and fund family gatherings at the lake house? Her cheeks flushed pink. You've never once complained before about helping out. Because I didn't realize I was being manipulated, I replied. I didn't know that while I was emptying my savings to help the family, Dad was directing money into your college fund that could have paid for your car and much more. It's not that much money, she mumbled, looking away. $280,000 is an extremely significant amount, especially compared to the $30,000 I received. Her head snapped up, eyes widening. How do you know exactly how much? I saw the investment statements, I said simply. A moment of uncomfortable silence stretched between us. Then, remarkably, Vanessa shifted tactics. Her expression softened as she reached for my arm with perfectly manicured fingers. Look, Audrey, I understand you're upset, and maybe you have some valid points, but we're family. We need your help right now. Dad says without the homeowners association payment, they might lose access to the lake house amenities, maybe even face liens. You wouldn't want that, would you? I stepped back from her touch. That's not my responsibility anymore. You'd actually let them lose the lake house where we spent every summer growing up? Where we learned to swim and had those family barbecues? How can you be so heartless? I looked at my sister, really looked at her, and saw the deep-rooted entitlement that had been carefully cultivated throughout her entire life. She genuinely couldn't comprehend why I would stop financially supporting the family while struggling with my own finances. They have other options, I said evenly. They could use some of your college fund. Vanessa's face hardened instantly. That's not fair. That money is for my future. I smiled sadly. No, Vanessa, nothing about this situation has been fair for a very long time. I closed the door gently but firmly, then leaned against it, listening to her heels click angrily down my front walk. 2 weeks passed. The homeowners association payment deadline came and went. I maintained complete radio silence with my parents and Vanessa, focusing instead on my summer school teaching and my own financial planning. Marcus had helped me restructure my modest investment portfolio now that I wasn't hemorrhaging money to my family. The difference was remarkable. I could finally increase my retirement contributions to appropriate levels and had started setting aside money for the down payment on a cabin of my own, something small and affordable, but mine. My newfound sense of financial peace was shattered when I received an email from Uncle Lawrence, my father's brother. Audrey, what's happening with Richard and the lake house? He approached me for a $10,000 loan to cover homeowners association fees and penalties. Mentioned something about you refusing to help the family anymore. This seems completely out of character for you, you've always been so supportive. I stared at my laptop screen, a bitter laugh escaping my lips. So my father was approaching other family members for loans rather than touching Vanessa's sacred college fund or adjusting their lifestyle. I carefully composed a reply, attaching a PDF summary of my financial contributions to the family over the past 5 years, along with copies of the investment statements showing Vanessa's college fund. Uncle Lawrence's response arrived within 45 minutes. Good grief, Audrey. I had absolutely no idea. None of us did. Richard has been telling everyone how he's struggling financially but doing his best to support both his daughters equally. This completely changes everything. The following afternoon, my cousin Ethan called. Audrey, there's something important you should know, he said, his voice tense with urgency. There's a family gathering happening at your parents' house this 4th of July weekend. Uncle Richard has framed it as a regular holiday get-together, but he's actually planning to discuss Audrey's abandonment of family traditions. He's trying to turn the extended family against you. My stomach clenched painfully. Thanks for letting me know. There's more, Ethan continued, his voice dropping lower. I overheard my dad talking to your father yesterday. Apparently, they're planning to guilt you into not just resuming the payments, but covering all the late fees and penalties too. They're characterizing it as you deliberately damaging the family's special place. The sheer audacity left me momentarily speechless. Are you going to be there? I finally asked. Yes, and you should come too, Ethan said firmly. You need to present your side of the story. I'll support you, and I know Uncle Lawrence will too after that email you sent him. I agreed, though anxiety churned in my stomach. Confronting my father with the extended family present would be incredibly difficult, but perhaps necessary to finally break this cycle. When the 4th of July arrived, I dressed carefully in a crisp navy blue dress and lightweight blazer, my professional teacher outfit that always gave me confidence during difficult parent conferences. I drove to my parents' suburban home with a leather portfolio containing the complete financial documentation from Jasmine Chin, including the notarized statements and detailed calculations of lost retirement savings. The spacious living room fell completely silent the moment I stepped through the doorway. My father stood by the stone fireplace, clearly interrupted mid-sentence. Aunts, uncles, and cousins sat around the room in patio chairs and on sofas, their expressions a complicated mix of confusion, concern, and curiosity. Vanessa sat beside our mother on the floral couch, both looking visibly uncomfortable, my mother nervously folding and refolding a paper napkin. Audrey, my father recovered quickly, his banker's composure returning as he straightened his posture. I'm glad you decided to join our little family celebration. We were just discussing the lake house situation. I'm sure you were, I replied evenly, setting my portfolio on the coffee table with a deliberate motion. And I'm certain you've provided everyone with all the relevant financial information, right, Dad? His eyes narrowed dangerously. We're discussing your sudden refusal to meet long-established family obligations that everyone has benefited from. Interesting characterization. I unzipped my portfolio and removed a stack of neatly organized documents. Because I have 5 years of meticulously documented financial records showing over $118,000 in family obligations I've already fulfilled. Money that apparently wasn't available to help with my master's degree or home down payment, but somehow was available for Vanessa's substantial college fund. A ripple of murmurs and whispers spread through the room like a wave. My Aunt Valerie, always direct and never one to tolerate nonsense, spoke up first. What college fund are you talking about, Audrey? I looked directly at my father, giving him the opportunity to explain himself. When he remained stubbornly silent, his jaw clenched tightly, I passed copies of the financial summary to everyone in the room. For the past 5 years, I explained as they began reviewing the documents, I've paid the homeowners association fees on the lake house, covered Vanessa's car payments, funded family gatherings, and more, totaling nearly $120,000 on a teacher's salary. During this same period, my parents established a $280,000 college and professional development fund exclusively for my sister, while I received about $30,000 total for my education. The room erupted into overlapping voices and exclamations. My father's face flushed a deep crimson. These are private family matters, he thundered, his voice shaking with barely controlled rage. Exactly, Uncle Lawrence interjected, standing up with his copy of the financial summary still in hand. Family matters. And in this family, we've always believed in treating children fairly and equally. I hadn't expected this level of immediate support. As the room divided into heated discussions, with some relatives questioning my father while others examined the documentation more closely, my father's gaze locked with mine across the room. In his eyes, I saw something I'd never witnessed in all my years growing up under his roof: fear. The fear of exposure, of his carefully constructed narrative of the struggling but generous father crumbling before his extended family. And behind that fear, something even more unexpected, a flicker of grudging respect. The family gathering dissolved into chaos, ending with my father storming out to the backyard and my mother tearfully following him. Vanessa sat frozen on the couch, staring at the financial documents, refusing to make eye contact with anyone. The rest of the family lingered in small clusters, processing the revelations with hushed conversations. I had absolutely no idea it was this severe, Aunt Valerie said, studying the financial documentation with her reading glasses perched on her nose. Richard always portrayed you as the responsible, financially secure one who didn't need any help. Uncle Lawrence shook his head in dismay. This arrangement isn't right. That lake house has been central to extended family memories for years. If you've been paying those association fees all this time, you should legally have some ownership stake in the property. I hadn't considered this angle before. The vacation property was titled solely in my parents' names, despite my significant financial investment in its upkeep over the years. I don't actually want the house, I explained, surprised to discover this was true. I just want them to recognize the fundamental unfairness of the situation they've created. Ethan placed a supportive hand on my shoulder. Recognition isn't sufficient, Audrey. There should be actual consequences for this kind of manipulation. 3 days after the explosive family gathering, my phone lit up with a text from my father. No apology, no acknowledgement of wrongdoing, just 5 curt words. The association payment is overdue. I stared at the message, absolutely incredulous at his audacity. After everything that had been revealed to the entire family, he was still treating me like his personal bank account. That evening, I received an unexpected call from my mother. Audrey, her voice was hesitant and strained, your father isn't handling this situation well at all. You know how much the lake house means to him, it's his pride and joy. More important than treating his daughters equally? I asked quietly. Her telling silence spoke volumes. Mom, I continued gently, I've contributed nearly $120,000 to this family. Dad created a $280,000 college fund for Vanessa without ever offering me similar support. The disparity is just staggering. I know, she admitted in a whisper. I've always known it wasn't right, but your father has always managed the financial decisions in our marriage. And I effectively funded them for you both, I finished for her. I understand how this happened, Mom. But this is where it stops. The next morning, I texted my father back with a single attachment, a photograph of the complete, notarized financial record of my contributions over the past 5 years, with the final total circled in red marker. No additional message was necessary. The documentation spoke for itself with undeniable clarity. An hour after sending the photo, my phone rang. I braced myself for my father's angry voice, but instead heard Vanessa's. Audrey? She sounded genuinely shaken, her normally confident real estate agent voice trembling slightly. Dad just showed me all the detailed documentation you sent over. Is it really that much? Over $118,000 from your teaching salary? Yes, it is, I confirmed, keeping my voice neutral. Every penny documented and verified by a forensic accountant. There was a long pause on the line. I had no idea, she said finally, her voice smaller than I'd heard since we were children. Dad always told me you were helping out a little here and there because you had extra money from your tutoring. He never said you were covering major expenses for years while he was building my college fund. Her voice cracked on the last words. For the first time since we were teenagers, I heard genuine remorse and shock in my sister's voice. Audrey, I don't know what to say. I feel absolutely terrible, Vanessa said, her confident facade completely crumbling. All these years, I just assumed. It's not entirely your fault, I conceded, leaning back in my desk chair and looking out at my modest garden. Dad created this situation and maintained it for years. We were both manipulated in different ways. But I benefited enormously from it, she countered, her voice steadying slightly. And I never once questioned any of it. I just assumed I deserved the help because of my potential. God, that sounds so entitled now that I say it out loud. Another long pause stretched between us, filled with years of unspoken resentments and realizations. Then Vanessa surprised me completely. I'm going to make this right, she declared with sudden determination. This situation isn't fair, and it never has been. Before I could ask what exactly she meant by that, she abruptly ended the call. The next day, while grading summer school essays at my kitchen table, I received an overnight delivery package containing formal documentation from my father's attorney. The homeowners association fees for the lake house had been paid in full, along with a legally binding amendment to the property deed. According to the documents, I now owned a 25% stake in the lakefront property. Attached was a professional note from the lawyer explaining that Vanessa had insisted on using funds from her college account to cover both the outstanding fees and legal costs for the ownership transfer. My phone buzzed with a text from my father. This legal arrangement wasn't necessary. Family helps family without paperwork. I didn't respond. His message revealed that he still fundamentally didn't understand, or perhaps refused to acknowledge, the basic unfairness of his actions over all these years. Minutes later, another text arrived, this one from my mother. Your father is having a hard time with all this, but I want you to know I'm very proud of you for standing up for yourself. I should have done the same thing years ago when I saw what was happening. That evening, as I was watering my potted plants on the porch, Vanessa called again. I've asked Dad to split my college fund equally between us, she said without preamble. He refused at first, you know how stubborn he is, but Uncle Lawrence and Aunt Valerie backed me up. He's meeting with his financial advisor tomorrow to make the arrangements for the transfer. I felt a profound weight lifting from my shoulders, not because of the money itself, which was certainly welcome, but because of what it represented, acknowledgement of past wrongs, a step toward fairness, and most importantly, respect for my contributions and needs. Thank you, Vanessa, I said sincerely, surprised at the emotion welling in my throat. No, she replied firmly. Thank you for finally making us all face the truth about our family. It was long overdue.